In our previous video about builder's risk insurance, we discussed some of the relevant parties who should highly consider obtaining this type of coverage and also the hard costs that they're faced with that this coverage offers protection for. In this video, we're going to follow up briefly and speak about some of those soft costs and then best practices for keeping builder's risk insurance up to date. Hi, my name's Liam Joy, and I'm Vice President here at Joy Insurance. We're going to follow up on the previous video that discussed builder's risk insurance and talk a little bit about, as already mentioned, soft costs and then best practices for making sure you have coverage throughout the entirety of any sort of project via cost of construction insurance. So aside from the property losses that can affect your hard costs, there are also soft costs that come into play that can be substantial whenever there is a significant delay or something that causes these sorts of costs to add up to an amount beyond the predetermined value. Now, soft costs aren't directly related to the physical building or structure, the other tangible assets that are part of construction, but they are still necessary to complete a project. Some examples of these include the architectural or engineering fees that go into a project, real estate and property taxes, inspection and permit expenses, interest on property loans, and equipment that is indirectly related to construction, such as computers, and post-construction legal fees. These are a couple of the soft costs that need to be scheduled. That means listed out on a builder's risk insurance policy in order to be covered in the event of a covered loss and subsequent project delay. Moving forward, we can also think about, while we have our hard costs identified and our soft costs identified, we need to make sure that our timelines match up throughout the entirety of a construction project, because as we all know, things are subject to change. There are unforeseen events that can't be predicted, and in order to have an anticipated timeline that's accurate enough so you don't have to incur any project losses is important. And good ways of making sure when it comes to best practices that you maintain coverage throughout the life cycle of a project. Understand your risk exposures right off the bat. That means when identifying the potential exposures you may face, think about the location where construction's happening. If there's any sort of in-transit materials, tools, or supplies throughout the regular course of construction, and if there's any sort of off-site storage facilities that are being used, because each one of these scenarios, stations, locations, may have different exposures. And due to that, there also may be different values that you need to apply to the goods, materials, and tools that are located in each of these different locations. So understand those exposures and where they're occurring. Make sure that you have an idea of when coverage should begin and when it could potentially need to be expired or end, because most of the time it's pretty well defined as to when a construction site may have workers on it to begin the implementation of design plans and different sorts of initial project deliverable completion, progress work, things like that. That's laid out pretty well in any sort of contract. However, due to different sorts of incidents and variables that come into play throughout the course of a project, these future goals and conclusion to a project can be adjusted throughout the life cycle. So if that's the case, you have to keep tabs on your builder's risk insurance, because it may have started on a certain date and it typically has a policy period timeline that you need to maintain throughout the course of construction, or else you may be without the protection that you had done such a good job of laying out and defining at the inception of a project, but because you didn't take into account some sort of project delays or moving anticipated completion date, that coverage wasn't in effect because it was forgotten about the different sorts of end dates, the policy expiration date. So keep tabs on those things. And one of the last recommendations we can always make is consult with a trusted agent or professional who can help you design a policy that fits your exact needs. It is a typically fluid sort of process. That's a conversation that occurs between you and somebody that knows how to identify the coverages that you need. So speak to your agent. We'd be happy to help anybody that works in construction with this sort of coverage. You can reach out to us here at Joy Insurance. Our phone number is 845-342-4888. And you can also email me, liam@joyinsurance.com. Thanks for tuning in.